take your notes.
Oh, good.
Hi, guys. What's up?
Why don't you say hi to Brian? It is quiet here. Right? Okay, what we're going to do is we've come up with a bunch of questions, and we're going to let him just start telling stories. And if we have some time, we'll take some questions from the audience. We'll try to make sure that we have some time.
Yeah, but if your questions are dumb, you will be ridiculed.
Yes.
Let's be very clear about that. So think about it.
So, Brian, how has The Office impacted your life?
Well, I'm not here, right? I guess that would be number one. First of all, thank you guys so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be back in New York. If you're Yankees fans, I'm sorry. Just root for the Dodgers later on, all right? Do me that favor. Look, I mean, it totally changed my life. I mean, I heard in the introduction I broke in to the entertainment business, and 3 months later got The Office. While that's partially true, I am a graduate of SMU in Dallas. I went there for theater, and I spent a number of years, close to 10, doing theater. So I was traveling around the country, spent some time in New York and Chicago and Dallas and San Francisco and other places doing theater. So that was my life. I mean, that's what I wanted to do, was to be an actor. Creating characters is what I love to do. Felt like that's what I was good at, and I thought that I would do theater forever. And I moved to Los Angeles, or no, I visited Los Angeles. By the way, how many people here have been to Los Angeles? Okay, some. It's pretty sweet, right? I mean, it's pretty good. It's a New York thing, right, to make fun of LA. That's a huge thing. Everybody in New York makes fun of LA. And everyone in LA keeps their mouth shut and doesn't say anything about New York. But I ask you this, how many people do you know that moved from LA to New York? And there's a lot of people who moved from New York to LA. I moved there, and I thought, well, I'm gonna give this a try. And I met the folks on The Office, Greg Daniels, the creator, Ben Silverman, Ken Kwapis, director of the pilot, and yeah, my life was instantly changed. I get to meet so many incredible people, like 3 that are here today. That was a joke. And yeah, it's a crazy thing, because theater was always what I was passionate about, and that live experience, that communal experience that happens, that doesn't happen anywhere else. But when you start to compare the number of people who, thank you, the number of people who see the work, who can be affected by the work, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's something that's crazy. It's in my book. I don't remember, but in 2020, there was a pandemic going on. I don't know, maybe it still is, I don't know. It was something like 59 billion minutes were watched on Netflix alone of The Office. And the crazy thing is, I think that, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, but it's the first show in the history of television that became more popular after we were done. I mean, we haven't filmed anything in 8 years, and right now, based on any metric that you can find, is currently the most watched show in television, which is insane, right? I mean, like, that's crazy pants. I mean, especially like you see, like, you know, whatever the new show, Stranger Things or Squid Game, which is pretty awesome. You know, Succession, Severance, but more people are watching The Office still today than anything else, and so yeah, it's insane.
How did you get the audition for The Office?
By the way, do you know he's the chief of police? So
Some of them do.
if you come and mess with me, he's right here. That's why they brought him along. What was your question? I just started thinking about you being the chief of police.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get the audition for The Office? Because in your book, you describe a little bit of subterfuge.
Yeah, so I was a bit, I don't know how many of you have seen the British version of The Office. So I watched that, I was a big fan of that, and there's a character in that called Keith. And we're not exactly the same, but that's where the character started, was Keith. And I was like, this is the part that I should play. And Allison Jones, casting director, is a genius, but she had me audition for the role of Stanley. So I auditioned for the role of Stanley, and I came in and I just went, this is not the part, but I had just moved to LA. Like, I couldn't call Allison Jones and say, you have made a mistake, Miss Jones. So I auditioned for Stanley as though it were Kevin. And I left the room, and I was like, that didn't go that great. And I was leaving, and she ran after me and said, hey, you know, there's this other role that we want you to audition for, and that was, of course, Kevin. One of the coolest things I'll tell you really quick, when Steve left, which we may or may not talk about, but when he left, Allison Jones came to me, it was after the 7th year, and she was like, I was looking for like some mementos for him, because she doesn't throw anything away. She was like, I didn't find that much, but I found this, I thought it would be interesting to you. And it was just a piece of paper, kind of yellowed and old looking, and it said Kevin Malone, and it said Brian Baumgartner, that's me, Eric Stonestreet, who went on to play Cam in Modern Family, and Jorge Garcia, the big guy on Lost, if you don't know. So, I don't know, it was just a really cool thing that that everybody who was on that list or up for that role ended up getting the show that they should have gotten.
What was your favorite or most memorable scene from The Office?
I'm not going to say the one that you think I'm going to say. You know, there's been a lot of conversation about whether the show could be made today or not. The show's making studios a ton of money, so I always say, are you kidding me? Of course it could be made today. I don't know if it would be exactly the same, but I did think that the storyline between Holly and Kevin was particularly fun to play. I'll tell you a little story about. Amy Ryan is a freaking genius New Yorker. I saw her the last time I was here, and our scene at the vending machine. If you go back and watch that scene, it's the only scene I think in the history of the show, 10 years, 9 seasons, that I couldn't not laugh. I couldn't not laugh. I couldn't not, her earnest, sweet face, picking up a button in my hand and having to explain to me that it was a button. It just made me laugh, just that idea of it. And I was like, I can't not laugh. I can't not laugh at her face looking at me like that. And I tried all the tricks. I had one with Steve Carell where I would just look right here because I knew if I caught his eyes, I was dead. And so then I consider it a stroke of genius. I remembered what was coming next out of the scene of the vending machine, which of course was, I'm totally gonna bang Holly. And so I thought, well, maybe Kevin can kind of smile, because that's what he's thinking in that moment, and then we'll cut to that, and I don't know, I thought it worked out pretty well, but when you see my smile there in that scene, if you watch it again, That's Brian smiling at Amy, not Kevin at Holly.
Well, you mentioned that obviously making the show today might be a little difficult. Were there any moments that came across as uncomfortable to film? You sort of like,
No, because I mean, here's the thing I think that people miss, and I think that, without getting overly political, I think it is a problem in our society today. I think that Michael Scott says a lot of things you shouldn't say. 100%. A lot of things you shouldn't say. And so I think that the tendency is for us to say, you can't say that. You can't say that on television. That shouldn't be on television. Today, they wouldn't put that on television. But I think I'm sorry, I don't know what I can say here. I think that's fucked up. Because I think what you're seeing is a person say something that you can't say, immediately followed by 15 or 16 people who are looking at him, looking at the camera, reacting to each other, and telling everyone, this is something you can't say. So the overall message is actually, quite frankly, incredibly PC. Like, it is incredibly, in a way, woke. And I think that the idea that, and the character of Michael Scott is a misguided person, and it doesn't excuse what he says. But I believe the message of the show is one of love, is one of inclusion, is one of family. And so the whole idea of this, which is great that you asked, because people talk about it all the time. It's troublesome to me, because I believe that the message is, I mean, when we filmed the second episode, by the way, that we ever did Diversity Day, when we filmed that episode, we were on set saying, no one is doing this anymore. At that time it had been, my math is kind of bad, 20 or 30 years, it was all in the family, since network television was examining issues of race and inclusion and exclusion before, that everyone else had just kind of like not talked about it anymore. And with all due respect to my friends on Friends, there's like 6 white people, one who's an unemployed actor who's living in the most gigantic Manhattan apartment I've ever seen. Like, I don't know how that really reflected life, but I felt like The Office, by talking about things, by challenging people, I was incredibly proud of that, even at the time that we were doing it. And I was like, man, people, and even then, right? I mean, this is 15, whatever years ago, 20 years ago. I was like, I don't know if people will get it. I'm like doing story time. I don't need you.
You breezed through like 12 of my questions. This is great.
It's on topic. My parents, obviously my parents were incredibly proud that I was on this network television show on NBC, and they would tell their friends, my son is on the show, you should watch the show. And their friends were like, we can't watch that show. That's Steve Carell, he's so awful. He's so terrible. The things that he says, oh. And at one point I was visiting them. I said, Mom, I'm sure your friends are really nice people, and I mean no disrespect by this, but I was like, do you think maybe they're a little uncomfortable by what he's saying? Do you think maybe it might hit a little too close to home? And they were like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, at the time, right, the #1 show on network television, like the most people watching it, not necessarily the young demographic or whatever, but like the most people were watching the original CSI show, CSI Vegas. It wasn't called Vegas, but the one in Vegas. Everybody knows it, at least you've heard of it or whatever. And it's like every single one of those episodes started, not everyone, I apologize. A lot of episodes started with a naked, basically teenage girl dead in the desert. And that somehow was totally fine for us to watch and consume. But the character of Michael Scott saying something that was maybe a little bit insensitive, I don't want to watch that. There's something really bizarre about that to me.
Let me see which one we have now. Who was your favorite coworker to work with on the set of The Office?
I mean, why would I answer that question?
It's not
Why
like
would
we're-
I
it's not
answer
like
that
we're recording
question?
or anything.
Who wrote that question? Was that you?
He's right there.
Okay.
Oh, was it?
I mean, first of all, I mean, truly, we were like a family, right? So if you have a family and you moderately get along with your family, I think you'll know what I mean. Like, your relationship with all of your family members are different, right? So your relationship with your brother is different than your sister, than your mom and dad, and the creepy uncle, Greed. Like, all the relationships are just different. So, like, I think this, right now, we're in, I think this is right, I think our 18th year of fantasy football, which is some crew members and cast, but John Krasinski and Rainn Wilson and myself, like, those are the principal casts that are involved. So, like, right now, my phone is just Rainn being really rude and inappropriate about my team and offering me a terrible thing. But Oscar Nunez and I travel together, Angela and I just work together and see each other. Jenna Fisher and I talk quite a bit. So it's just, yeah, it's different. I will tell you this though, bar none, the funniest person, the person that made me laugh the most off camera is Oscar Nunez. Oscar Nunez he's a genius. Besides me.
Of course. What is the biggest similarity between you in real life and your character, Kevin, aside from your profound love of chili?
I mean, this is a tough one for me to answer. Most of my friends, if they were asked this question, would say that I'm probably the least like my character in real life. But the writers well, first of all, by the way, I am not a drummer. I cannot drum. I don't have any skill whatsoever in drumming. But I fooled Alice Cooper. So I showed up to do this charity event for Alice Cooper, and this guy comes to me and he's like, yeah, so you guys know that song, right? Like, school's out for summer. This guy comes and he's like, I'm backstage, like having a cocktail, just hanging out. He's like, hey, so Alice, when they play School's Out for Summer, the drummer's gonna leave and you're gonna go on and play. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that for sure. I'm not going to do that with Alice Cooper. I can shoot the rock. That was me, and that was unedited, and that was one take too, by the way, 13 in a row from free throw line around the arc. I might like to get, thank you very much. I might like to gamble. That's a similarity. But I've never embezzled. I don't know. Personality-wise, I think we're pretty different.
Okay. What is the craziest thing a fan has ever done or said to you? That is rated PG for our audience.
No, well, hold on. You just said done to you, by the way. That was your first statement.
I gotta
Oh, we have to be PG? We have to be PG
No,
here? Oh. I'll tell you two stories. One really made me laugh. The other is less PG. The first one was, I talk about this in the chili book, but this person never imagined that I would tell this story for so many years, but I was in Pittsburgh And I was there for work, so I was like, you know, had on like my hat, I'm sitting at the corner of the bar, and I had just finished eating. And the, you know, someone had come by, I would think I was on my phone, I was definitely distracted, and had taken my food away, and then a couple of moments, it felt like later, the bartender comes up and puts food down in front of me. And I just, you know, I just looked up at him and I was like, oh, no, I just ate. And the bartender, I always say it the same way, it's like the 50s, I don't even know if that's the right era, but like in one of these olden time movie deals, he kind of leans down on the bar and he's like, this is from the woman at the end of the bar. And I look down and it's a bowl of chili. And I thought that was pretty funny. We're married now. No, we're not. So there was that one. This one is crazy. I was shooting. This is just a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic. I was shooting a movie down in Columbus, Georgia, and middle of summer, super hot. So there's not a lot of clothes going on anywhere, except for me. No, there was an outdoor bar, and this guy comes over, one of the producers on the movie, and he's like, you've gotta meet this woman. She's a huge fan of the show. So I go over, and she's like bartending outside, you know, like cracking beers or whatever, and doing that, and she said, I have to show you something. I said, okay. And she's got on like a tank top thing, so she, you know, you know, some sort of bra thing under it or whatever, but she lifts up the back of her shirt and down her spine, starting at the base of her head all the way down to, it says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. It just kept going. And she hands me a Sharpie and she says, will you sign my back? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, this is all weird. And she's like, no, I need you to sign my back because I'm gonna go get that tattooed tomorrow. And I was like, oh, then yes, I'll sign your back. So anyway, I then, the same producer, I think he was like from there or something, sent me a while later a picture, and yes, she got my signature tattoo. So it then said, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, and then my signature after.
Changing lives.
Yes, changing lives.
Do you have any cherished pieces from the set that you took from the show? And if so, why are they meaningful?
Borrowed, I prefer borrowed.
Yeah.
Took, Mr. Chief of Police, I just borrowed it.
It was an elaborate investigation.
From NBC, I borrowed it. Yeah, I'll share this with you. This was a discovery I just had like a year ago. The greatest prop gift in the history of the show, no one ever thought to make it. But so I took primarily three things. I took the very first moment that I'm referenced in the show. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's Michael saying, you know, Kevin, he's sort of introducing everyone to Ryan, the intern. He's introducing all the characters. He said, Kevin, not such a great accountant, but a great entertainer, or something like that. And then there's a shot of me with this giant pencil, like pretending to write, trying to make Oscar laugh. I took the giant pencil. It was a piggy bank, by the way, and it was never referenced again for 10 years. But I took that, and then I took my nameplate, right? Because I was like, well, it says Kevin Malone on it. I should take it. This has been on my desk now forever at home, and it occurred to me about a year ago that for 10 years, Kevin's nameplate sat on his desk facing him. Like you have a desk and the nameplate faces out so that other people could see it. Mine didn't. It sat right there facing me for 10 years. No one ever thought the joke, but I wish that we had, because I think that's an amazing joke. And then I took the jar of M&Ms. And I do have a story about that. I took the jar of M&Ms. That was my prized possession for sure. I wanted that. It was there forever. And I took it, just like when you get fired from a job, we all got boxes and we put stuff in and brought it home. And I sat it on my desk and there it sat. And quite a while later, like months, I walk into my office. I don't know if I'd been traveling or whatever. I walk into my office and I'm like, the M&Ms are down. Like they're disappearing. Like this is not right. And what I should have done is like what some of your parents do and draw the line in the alcohol to see exactly how fast it was going down. I didn't do that. But then like a month or two later, I come in and I'm like, oh no, they're like really going down. And I can't figure out what's happening. And then I realize that every week, my house cleaner is coming into my office, grabbing a handful of M&Ms and throwing them in her mouth. Now, I was like, oh my God, I am poisoning her. These have been there forever. These are like, it's like a memento in a museum. You're not supposed to be eating these. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I felt bad for a second. And then I was like, but what's worse? She's stealing from me. So what? No, that's a joke. That was a joke. I threw them away. And now periodically I will buy fresh M&Ms and put them in there for a little while, especially when I'm having people over. But yeah, those are the big things.
When the cast were going through the readings, were there any twists or surprises that you guys were genuinely shocked by?
I mean, no one was murdered like in a drama. I think that would be difficult. Like if you didn't know that was coming. No, I don't think. I'll at least use this as an opportunity to tell this story. We may have done the greatest lie ever to a network in the history of television. Steve Carell, who left the show after the 7th season, he agreed to come back for the finale. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it. At the time, you probably weren't watching it live at the time, most of you, but we did not tell NBC. In fact, the cast didn't know. Nobody knew. It was Greg Daniels and Steve Carell who knew that Steve was coming back. And I mean, like, we showed up at whatever this weird farm location was for Dwight and Angela's wedding, and got out of the car and someone said, Steve's here. And it was like, Steve who is here? Because it had been asked a ton, like, is Steve coming back? Is Steve coming back? He had publicly said no, like on the Tonight Show and stuff. He was like, no. And the reason why was because, right, at that point, we didn't care about ratings because it's the last episode. Like, it really, truly doesn't matter. And what Greg and Steve wanted was for it to be a shock, for it to be a surprise, that for nobody to know what happened. So when we read that episode, back to your question, see how I'm bringing it back to your question? There was a weird scene with Creed. And we shot that weird scene with Creed, like kind of the same and going into, before the wedding, and kind of put it in there as a placeholder and shot it. And NBC, that was the version that they got, and that was the episode. And Greg, and at that point the editor, they rented a friend of the editor's private studio, no joke, in their basement. And that's where they edited all of the Steve Carell footage from the wedding and delivered it like at 5 o'clock when it was airing at 8 or 9 o'clock that night. And NBC was so pissed because they would have done exactly what they didn't want them to do, which is like, Steve Carell returns to the office. And Greg just wanted it to be a shock for people, for that experience to be something cool. And it was the last episode, so who cares how many people were watching? We weren't coming back anyway, so. Anyway, that's one. Yeah, again, the Kevin Holly thing, we laughed so hard at that because that was a joke that was like set up for 4 years. Like to have a joke that was that long coming, that's what she said. That was pretty special.
Speaking of, the final show, you guys had a parade through Scranton.
We did.
What was that like?
That was insane. That was insane. And that was the episode hadn't aired yet? Is that right? I think it hadn't aired yet. And that was another surprise there. There were like 100,000 people came into Scranton. I mean, you guys, you cannot believe. If you go back and look at these pictures, they're like town square where they set up a stage. You couldn't see past the people. It was, we did a parade in the town, and then we did a Q&A like this, but in Scranton, and they were like, well, I think a lot of people are gonna wanna come, where should we do it? And they did it in the baseball stadium, like, because they wanted to get as many people in as they could. And Steve was filming Anchorman 2, I think, in Atlanta, and that one I knew about, because I was tight with the people from Scranton, and I figured out how to get him in and stuff, but no one who was attending there knew that he was coming. That was cool.
In this country, we are divided, and numerous heated debates have ruined many a Thanksgiving dinner, so I have to ask you where you stand on one of those great debates.
Okay.
Chili, beans or no beans?
Okay, here we go.
Chili questions.
This is the transition to the chili question. You guys, if I thought 10 years ago that I would still be talking about chili, well, I promise you I did not think that I would still be talking about chili. Beans or no beans, I say both. I enjoy both. I think for me, chili is more beans, but carne is also delicious. How's that for my Texas friends? There's no one here from Texas, I think.
Probably.
No one.
How did you amass all the recipes?
Well, guys, 177 recipes in the old cookbook here. We should start back before that. We got this scene. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Kevin spills the chili in the office. Oh yeah. And we got the scene, and I thought it was funny, and it was cool, and it was something kind of different also, which is one of the weird things that is persevered, thrived so much longer is if you look at it, it's very different. It's like most of it plays over in a voiceover. It's just one character. So there are a lot of things about it that were different, but there was, there were high stakes to not screw this up, or to screw it up as few times as possible. And so there was a lot of rehearsal, and that part of it was fun. I got it in one take. Yes, thank you. Very proud of that now, since we are still talking about it. And they had, I'm trying to see here. So the carpet, there was carpet at Dunder Mifflin, and the piece of carpet that they had for like safety was bigger than the whole front of this room, right? Like it came from the front door, around reception, Pam's thing, over to the Dwight and Jim clump. It was there, and they said, we got 3 pieces of carpet. That's all we got. And they were very nervous about this with me. And they had, they had that, they had obviously extra chili, they had multiple outfits that, I could change into. I don't think that they fully imagine what a job it would be to clean me, like my skin, body. My hands were stained this brown orange color for multiple days. We used to do when we were, I mean we still do, but kind of regularly, Oscar and Angela and I, we would have accountants dinners. We call them the accountants dinner. No one else could come, no partners, girlfriend, boyfriend, spouses, anything. It was just the three of us. We would go out and go to a really nice place and have too many drinks and then Uber home. And we had one planned for that night. Those guys got off early. I was there by myself, Friday night, shooting by myself. And I showed up to dinner. I couldn't eat because I just smelled chili, just like all over my hands and so forth. And you know, it was well received. And then with the GIFs, the GIFs, the memes, the t-shirts, the socks, the pillows. I have a buddy now who, when I go and I check into a hotel, oftentimes there's just a weird homemade memorabilia thing of me spilling chili in the hotel room. And I don't know how he lets them put this in there, but it's in slippers. There's a Kevin spills his chili, toilet rug, what do you call it? Like where it's in front of the toilet, where you stand or sit, or I don't know what you do. I'm like, why, this is insane. And so I eventually at one point I made chili. And I had never made chili before, but I made it and I took a picture of it and I posted it on some social media and people like lost their freaking minds. They were like, oh my God, he's making chili. By the way, I can post a picture of a steak, or I could post a picture of a baseball game and somebody on social media will be like, where's the chili? Are you eating chili with the steak? But I posted a picture of this, people went nuts, and so I started making it more and more, and I do truly enjoy it. Someone really recently, like this last week, said, imagine if the writers of The Office had made it clam chowder that I made. It wouldn't be the same, because I think there is a cultural thing about making chili and perfecting it, and it's a communal thing, right? I got in trouble for saying this before, but very few people make chili for themselves. Now, I'm not talking about warming it up in a can. I'm saying like, you don't make a pot of chili for yourself. You make it, you're gonna watch a game, or you're gonna have a holiday, you're gonna have friends over, or family, or whatever. Like that's when you do it, and a lot of times multiple people are making it together. Anyway, I just got really into it. I thought it was really fun to do, and I am kind of a cook, and so I started doing it more and more. And then I was not invented, weird. I was invited, invited is the word I was trying to say. I was invited to, there's a thing, this is true, it's called the International Chili Society. Yes. And they host something called the World Championship Chili Cook-Off. This has been going on over 50 years. Like, this is a legit thing. And over a year ago now, I was invited to come and like judge and like do this thing, and my mind was blown away. So it's like, yes, what I thought was like chili beans or no beans, or like, you know, how spicy is it? That would be another. No, I mean, there's chicken, there's one of my favorites now. I had this first time, I was like, is this chili? Yes, this is chili. It's like a white, a smoked chicken, white bean. It's like white, it's delicious, it's incredible. And I was like, people need to experience, people love making chili, and like, you probably do it one way, but like wanting people to have this experience. So, came up with this. We asked for fans to submit recipes. They were incredible. we got all these celebrity chefs, and we have a bunch of literally world champion recipes in here. So it was really fun to put together, and yeah, I just went back. We kind of timed the book launch. I mean, nobody eats chili in July. It's weird, right? Like you wanted to start getting a little cold, to have the fall come, so that's when they do this this championship. And I just went a couple weeks ago. It was incredible.
And for the fall, I actually saw one in there that has pumpkin in it.
Pumpkin, mezcal, like some of the ones that are crazy but like really delicious. There's some vegan, vegetarian, yeah, turkey, obviously chicken. Yeah, so there truly is kind of something for everybody.
That's great. Do you want to take some questions from the audience?
Sure, if you have questions.
Just kind of yell it out.
I do want to say one other thing though, because I'm probably going to start to be an idiot here, and I do want to say this about the chili moment. This is a relatively new discovery for me, but this part of this came out of the podcast that I did and have been doing, and I asked everybody that came in. If you haven't listened, by the way, you should. I played for them the last line of the show, which is Pam sang a version of, I don't know why they decided to make a documentary about people who worked at a paper company. And then she says, but I think it was a good thing, blah, blah, blah. There's beauty in ordinary things. Isn't that kind of the point? And I think that that's what the show was. I think that's very clearly what Greg Daniels wrote the last episode, and that was the last line of the show. That's what he was going for. And so two things. One is I think that's why ultimately people are still watching it and watching it more and more, because the world can be ugly. And the number of people, you asked about how my life has changed, but if I were you and asked that question slightly differently, it's like, what is the greatest thing the show gave me? It's the experiences that I've had with people who have come up to me and said, not just told me, had an intense need to tell me that The Office got them through a difficult time. A medical issue, a family issue, serving in the military overseas, that it helped them in some way. And I think that the reason is the show is funny, but it's ultimately, I believe truly, whether you think about it when you're watching it or not, it is a celebration of ordinary people who at times have small victories that are celebrated, and that there is a communal feeling of love. And so I think that this chili moment, I mean, is it a hilarious example of brilliant physical comedy? Yes, it is. That was a joke. But I think also it is kind of the physical manifestation of that idea that I'm talking about, which is here is an ordinary guy, and he tells you in this voiceover, it's probably the thing I do best. And he works at it, and he works at it, and he's proud of it. So he's gonna bring it in to his family of office workers, because he wants to share that with them. Now, it screws up, it doesn't go well. It's a comedy after all, but I think that idea, the idea of that, wanting that, I think ultimately that's what, it becomes a sad moment in a way for Kev. And I think I hope that is one of the reasons that moment has kind of persevered, because it kind of embodies what the show is talking about without getting too deep. Anyway, there you go.
Your question.
So I was just wondering, like, if you weren't acting, what do you think you would be doing? Like, if you weren't so successful in your career with acting, like, what was your backup plans?
What would I do if I wasn't an actor? Well, my dream early on was to be a professional baseball player. That was way early on. Some people want to be firemen. I wanted to be the first baseman for the Atlanta Braves. I don't know. Honestly, I didn't really have one. And I think that was, I mean, I know that's rare. Most people, when you go to school, you think you're gonna do one thing and you discover something else, and so you try that and you pursue 5 or 6 different things by the time you graduate, and then maybe you end up doing something that isn't related to any of those things anyway. I was pretty singularly focused. Yeah, I mean, I went to school for it. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I think that also it was really about acting. I mean, it was really about creating characters. That was interesting to me, and if I was still doing theater, I mean, if I had moved to Los Angeles and hadn't met them and nothing had happened, or I was more suited for the stage, I would probably be doing that. And yeah.
Other questions? Over here.
What is your favorite conspiracy theory about Kevin's character?
Well, you guys know Reddit, right? Do you know Reddit? All right, I'll explain it to you. It's an internet site where you can go. No, I've gone down the dark hole of Reddit a few times, and my favorite there is that Kevin is actually a genius, and he's been manipulating everyone the whole time, and he's been embezzling from Dunder Mifflin, and that's how he gets the bar, and I don't know, there's like 8 or 10 examples where I'm like, that's pretty interesting, but I don't think that's true. No, I don't think Kevin is a secret genius.
Other questions? You start in the back. Yell it out.
How common were improv scenes?
How common were improv scenes? Good question. It just totally varied. Like I mean, it's this kind of a boring answer, but I'll give you a little tidbit at the end. The NBC Universal is a mega conglomerate organization, company that has to do things by the book. So there's a little group of nerdy people called Standards and Practices. And so every single word that is said on network television has to go through, and every image really has to go through Standards and Practices. Actually, I get this, ready? I am the first, I haven't told this, at least in a long time. I am the first person on national television to do this on television. Thanks. Yeah, clap for that. Trailblazer. Apparently this had been done, but actually penetrating the circle had never been done on national television. That's true. So everything had to be approved. So if a scene was written, we had to do the scene as it was written because of that. But then on The Office, we were always able to play and change things or extend scenes by improvising. The phrase that we use, I can't even think of what it is right now, but basically, we would always allow to take, even if a scene was incredibly well written and very tight, we were still sort of able to, if there was something we wanted to try, to do that. I found out recently from the editor of the episode, I think it was from the editor of the episode, somebody told me the longest improvised scene that stayed in The Office, which it made a ton of stuff get cut, was the scene in the Halloween episode between Dwight and Michael, where Michael has the head on his shoulder and he's talking to the head on the shoulder, and Dwight is telling him not to talk to the head on the shoulder, and it goes on and on. I think there was one line, and those guys just went nuts with it, and it ended up being several minutes or something like that. But anyway, that was like the longest total continual thing that was there. So it really depends. Some episodes there was a lot, some very little. Yeah.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you for coming in and answering everybody's questions, including mine. Can some students get some photos with you?
Absolutely. Thanks you guys so much. Thanks for having me.